Now let's look at adding a quick watercolor wash onto our sketch. So I'm going to start off with the golden statue here. So to make it look nice and bright, the idea is to leave a lot of white areas. The color as such is bright yellow. So for this I'm going to use a little bit of cadmium yellow and a tiny bit of orange, just to make it a little bit more golden yellow like. With my brush I'm just going to add a little bit of color here onto the structure. Now almost immediately I'm going to add a tiny bit of brown, let's say something like burnt sienna. So a little bit on the tip of my brush, just drop that color in for some deeper shadows. And also, without washing my brush clean, I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue just to add that extra bits of shadow there. And then I'm just going to use my brush without washing it just to fill in that area of the structure. I'm going to get a little bit of shadow color for the palace itself. So let's try orange and ultramarine blue. Sort of gives you a very dull grey color. So it's going to be somewhat like that, but with more water. So let's add some more water and see how that works. I'm going to use this with a little bit of Naples yellow as well, or any sort of warm yellow that you have. So I'm going to do them both together, have a little bit of yellow as well in between. So let's start off with some grey, making sure to leave that white unpainted area around the statue, and also being very careful not to paint in this area, which is where the light is falling directly. So if you look at the reference picture, you can see how the light falls directly into these areas, and I'm not going to paint in that area. Simultaneously getting a little bit of Naples yellow, maybe add a tiny bit of splashes here and there. So let's carry on again with the grey. I'm going to leave that area unpainted and then start off with the structure here. Again, making sure to leave the flags unpainted as well. I forgot to add that structure on top, so I'm just going to do that with my brush now. Again, simultaneously, you can add a little bit of yellow if you like, not really necessary. Just going to try and add a little bit, just little drops here and there, just to suggest the color. So I'm continuing with the ultramarine, and again being very careful to leave some unpainted areas as well to show light reflection. For the green of the willow tree, I'm going to use a mixture of Winsor yellow and Winsor blue, which is a very bright green. So I've got a bright green here. I'd like a little bit more dull green as well, so I'm going to use the same color, Winsor yellow and Winsor blue, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of permanent red into the mixture. Right, so that's for the shadow color, so let's put that down first. And then quickly washing my brush, adding a little bit of lighter green as well. Not everywhere, maybe a little bit, and then I'm going to leave the rest as unpainted areas. Using the same green, I'm going to add a tiny bit of color onto the tree here. And you can even do dots and dashes just to add some interest an even splatter, just making that green a little bit more deep here, using a deeper blue or Prussian blue, and I think I can leave it at that now. Now, washing my brush, I need a little bit more of blue into this green mixture, and I'm using cobalt blue into this green mixture to depict trees in the background, again leaving a lot of white areas. Again, for more green, I'm going to mix a little bit of Winsor yellow, and this time I'm using a deep blue called indanthrene blue to give me a very deep green, just to outline the foliage here. But that's about it. I'm not going to carry on adding color here. It's just depicting the foliage, and that's about it. Quick brush movement for here as well. Now for the final details, that is the flags, which is a very bright red and blue, which definitely stands out in this picture. So I'm going to use a little bit of permanent red. And now I'm going to wash my brush and add a little bit of blue. For the blue, I'm going to use indanthrene blue, which is a very deep navy-like blue. So looking at the picture, I can see a little bit of shadow here. For this, again, I'm going back into my ultramarine blue and orange. Tiny bits of shadow here. It sort of makes the illustration look more interesting as well. Now for some finishing touches, I'm quickly going to wet the paper for some reflections in the water. I'm using the same green with a little bit more Prussian blue in it for a deeper reflection in the water. And you can also use a little bit of bright cobalt blue for some quick brush strokes. You can also use a little bit more pen for finishing touches, like darkening some areas, toning down some areas, giving it a little bit more depth, like how I'm doing here with the pen. I'm just scribbling the area where I think it needs to be a bit more darker, especially the reflections of the willow tree in the lake. You can also add different types of pen lines. It could be jumpy lines or scribbly lines, even dots and dashes, just to add more texture to the whole sketch. Here again I'm using little short lines to create texture of grass. You can do lots more things with the pen, and it depends on what you really want in your sketch, and it's a very personal thing to do as well. So I hope you'll enjoy using the pen to create these different textures on your sketch.